sorry. What's the matter with you? Billy, wait up. I said, wait a second. Listen, Tori's gone and there's nothing we can do to bring her back. But she should have told us about the dragon a long time ago. She dumped the whole thing on us as usual.
Well, how was she supposed to know this was gonna happen? She did the best she could, Jimmy. I can't believe you. She was the only family we had. It's not like people were lining up to take care of us after Dad died.
Yeah? Well, what the hell do you think I've been doing, huh? Look, we need to work on a plan.
No. No more plans. You're always planning, Jimmy, and I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it.
We can't afford to flap the handle. This isn't some stupid tournament, Billy.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another fantastic episode of Nerd with Dre and Jeff. I am not Dre.
I am your evil shadow clone. Maybe, who knows? Maybe I'm a possessed clone. We don't know, Jeff. There are places to go. Dre Alvarez found most places as nerd numbers.
I'm the Jimmy and you're the Billy, right? Is that?
In this case, if I'm being the shadow clone, I'm the Jimmy, and I've got thoughts on that. So, Jeff, what the heck are we talking about?
I don't even know, man. I mean, I know the title. I know the title of the movie that we're covering in our final unfortunate video game adaptations. The title is Double Dragon. This is a 1994 movie based off of a 1987 arcade cabinet game and any popular NES game. Very popular around 1987 to 1991. So, of course, 1994 movie. Now, the real question is, what is Double Dragon, the movie? And the correct answer is, I don't know. I don't know.
Basically, what happened is we started around a video game idea because we wanted to integrate with the Rayman, which was awesome. And, then of course it's like, well, Doom was a fantastic pick. By the way, I'll shout this out. Tom Ryman did a Best Bad Movie Ever podcast on Doom. And I thought I'd heard him talk about it before. I couldn't find it on Gamefully, and then I finally tracked that down. So that was good stuff. There's a good episode of Best Bad Movie Ever with Tom Ryman and Abe Epperson and Dave Christopher Bell on the Doom movie. So if you want to get more Doom fun, that was last month's episode, you can do that. Street Fighter perfectly fit into that mold, and we enjoyed that. And I was like, Double Dragon makes so much sense. Same era, same time frame. Mark Dacascos would have been a fantastic Ryu for Street Fighter. It would make me laugh if he was too busy on this movie to be in consideration for it. I was like, this just makes too much sense, but this was a case of me picking it blindly. I have seen this movie. I did not remember it. Clearly my memory blocked it out. And then I was like, okay, we just got to do this movie. And the first thing I said after I watched it, I was just like, I'm sorry, Jeff, I understand the podcast is over. So completely understandable. I walked into this blind, and right after walking into it was like, oh no, we're doomed.
Yeah.
We're doomed. This is, I'm going to throw softball, Jeff. Of all of the things we've watched, so we're almost up to 20 episodes of Nerd, which is awesome. Of all of the episodes, including the things that I am fondly nostalgic for that I can admit are not
I'll
great,
answer your question before you ask it. This is the worst thing we've ever watched.
by a large margin.
By leaps and bounds. I'm going to put it, well, I don't know if the Ewok TV special is much better.
Here's a counter argument I can give there, and we discussed that in the Ewok movie. At the time the Ewok movie came out, both of them, they were popular, they were award-winning, they were profitable. Even at the time this movie came out, everybody was like, what the absolute hell was that? 7.8 million budget, less than 2 million in returns, and I don't think it made up its money in DVD sales, etc.
It probably made its money back in VHS sales, but not by much. Like, at least it was the height of the rental period, and home video. But man, Double Dragon, this has got to be, I've never seen a movie that when you're watching it, you're like, oh, they didn't have a plan for this. I would love to see the storyboards of this movie versus what actually happened, because this movie, this can't be what their plan was. There's no way.
So, Jeff, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start with Double Dragon 1, the game, because there is so much to talk about how the game goes. I'm going to do that. I'm going to let you see if there's any way you can top level the movie, and then we've got lots of places to go. And we are going to go to save all of you out there from watching this movie. For the love of God, do not. We'll do our classic thing. We'll go through beat by beat. We'll talk about absurdities. That is going to be the most enjoyable way to imbibe this movie if you're curious about what happens. please, even though it's free on YouTube, even though it's free on Amazon, do not watch this movie.
I'm going to add, not only is it free on YouTube, it's free without ads. Like, somebody just put this out there. No one cares. Like, nobody cares that Double Dragon is on YouTube for free with no ads. It is unhinged.
Yes, I love it. Okay, so Double Dragon the game, the 1987 arcade cabinet, and I'm going to explain one small difference that came into the Nintendo game. Very simple. You're Billy, your girlfriend gets kidnapped by a rival gang. You have to go through 4 different areas, kind of very Warriors-like, beat them up. The last boss, I love this, Jeff, in the arcade cabinet. You go through like escalating, and the last boss, like the thing that he's upgraded with is he's got a gun.
He's
So
got a
everybody
machine
else-
gun, yeah.
Everybody
And
else, they've
gold
got like,
armor, if I recall.
they've got like bats and dynamite and boxes. And the last guy, he's like, what if I bring a gun to a martial arts fight? And you're like, that's a good idea.
Yeah, Double Dragon 1 is the rock upon which all other beat 'em ups break themselves upon. So, like, Double Dragon, it's also the first arcade game I ever beat.
And I'm going to say this about this. If you look at the graphics, because I found an emulator of the first one, I actually beat it too, myself and Landon, who is going to be a producer of the show, I'll bring it up in a second. We actually played this game on like 2TV gaming is what we call it on Mondays. We play games with each other, old stuff, and just talk about it. I played the arcade game, found an emulator. The graphics for 1987 are ridiculous. Even on the Nintendo, because we played that version as well, the Nintendo controls are amazing. It is a really good game, and the first one is just really simple. Your girlfriend's been kidnapped. You have to beat up a bunch of gangs to get her back. That's the start. And both the game series and the movie and the comics and everything go off the rails. I'm just going to describe the Nintendo version, and I think it started a lot of the weirdness, because in the Nintendo version, it's the same game almost verbatim with worse graphics, like significantly worse graphics.
NES graphics, yeah.
Yeah.
Could be, well, because the arcade game, that's what, 32 bits?
It's
Like,
nice. Yeah.
you know-
It takes until the Super Nintendo for it to catch up. And what I'll throw about this is the arcade was co-op. That was the other part. You could play 2-player. You said you beat it with your brother in the arcade.
We did. I remember it was at a seafood restaurant in either Maine or Cape Cod. I forget where, but I remember our parents like let us go do that while they were like probably like, yeah, just let them leave us alone.
How many quarters do you think you put in there?
Oh, it was a couple bucks. Like, we did not.
That's still not bad. Like,
Yeah, but it's also like,
Yeah.
80s or 90s money. So
but even then, I mean, from like you're mentioning, like the parents' perspective, like that's free that's babysitting. Like you would have paid that much to an adult or person to watch you. So let video games watch you instead. But okay, here is the back of the box of the Double Dragon game for Nintendo. And what I think is key is the game did not have co-op. The arcade Double Dragon is co-op because there are 2 of you fighting. Nintendo ported it almost identical, but there is no co-op. So, all right, Double Dragon is the story of Billy and Jimmy Lee, twin brothers who learned to fight on the cold, tough streets of the city. Their expert knowledge of martial arts combined with their street smarts has made them both formidable fighting machines. But now Billy is faced with his greatest challenge. His girlfriend, Marion, has been kidnapped by the Black Warriors, the savage street gang of the mysterious Shadow Boss. Using whatever weapons come to hand, knives, whips, bats, rocks, oil drums, even dynamite. Not guns, though, Billy, not guns. Billy must pursue the gang throughout the slums, factories, and wooded outskirts of the city to reach the hideout for his final confrontation with the Shadow Boss, his brother, Jimmy. So the game makes the big bad at the end his brother, Jimmy, and I think it's because there was no co-op. So like, why is this called Double Dragon? And instead of saying no one's going to care, they're like, what if his brother is the Double Dragon and he's the last boss? Which was not in the original arcade game.
if I recall, though, you fight at the end of the arcade game. You and your brother fight after you beat the game.
In the second one, you fight a shadow version. In the original
Yes.
arcade, I think you just fight the machine gun guy. I don't
Did you
think you
beat
fight
the original arcade by yourself or with a partner?
by myself, and I don't
I
recall
did
fighting,
it with
but
a
maybe I'm wrong.
partner, and I'm pretty sure if I recall, my brother then beat me to death.
So at the end, if you're both fighting, you fight each
I
other.
think
That's
after you
cool.
beat the machine gun boss, you then have to fight each other for like the girl or something.
Yeah.
Like, obviously it's been 30 years or whatever since I played it, but I do recall my brother killing me in that game. So
That's fun stuff.
like, I guess if they have that in the arcade game, they're like, all right, well, the reality of it is they have to change the plot a little bit, because if they had 2-player co-op, you would have a lot of screen freezing and screen slowing on an 8-bit cartridge.
Yeah, that was the key. Is if you look at it, I mean, we've discussed like the Mike Tyson Punch Out, why they had to change it. One of the earliest episodes in Nerve, we're getting back to our roots, Jeff. We discussed that, and just like the difference between arcade and home console. And this was ridiculously early. So that's the thing. This is 1987. The game comes out on the Nintendo in 1988. So this is before even some of the breakthroughs like the Zelda cartridge, also an old nerd episode, where they started adding like battery backup and stuff. So like that's the thing, is they were definitely hardware constrained, exactly like you're saying.
But just look at like if you play Zelda and there's like 17 enemies on the screen, even with Zelda's processing, it slowed it down so much. Like everything would get slow.
That
So
would be the
if-
original Zelda, and Zelda 2, they actually updated that and added lots of glitches. Listen to that nerd episode. We talk a lot about this. They actually updated it so you can only have 6 enemies on screen intentionally for that like reason. Okay, but that's the game, Jeff. Let's see what you can do. What's the movie? Can you do the movie quickly? Movie done
No.
quick.
No, I don't even know the plot after I've seen it, but I can try. And buddy,
Whoa.
okay. At first, we start out in what seems like Ancient China, but is it also Ancient China? Because there's happening right now, because we also see that there are different characters in there, including Al Leong, who I'm very excited to see in here. And I feel like people don't appreciate that he's in there. But anyway, they talk about the Double Dragon, which is a medallion that gives powers between both the spirit and the body. And it is now broken up, missing. A king is killed. Well, then we cut to, we have a shadow boss. We have Billy and Jimmy Lee, who are apparently brothers, but also they look absolutely nothing alike. You have not Matthew Fox, Scott Wolf, the other Party of 5 animal guy. Scott Wolf and Mark Dacascos, who are the 2 most physically opposite looking people you've ever seen. Really fantastic. They are in the city of New Angeles, which takes place in 2007, where global warming and gang wars and everything has destroyed the entire city. The gangs run New Angeles at night. The cops supposedly run it in the morning. There are gangs of mimes, and this movie sucks. This movie sucks so bad. I'm done. I'm not gonna do this, because I can't recount the actual plot to this movie. This is an unsurmisable plot.
It's got so much going on, and yeah, we'll do the big thing. I don't know. You asked the question about Dutch. Who is this for? Another great episode of Nerd. This to me had a lot of that, because this movie is based on, as you mentioned, an arcade game that was really, really popular in the late 80s. Fun trivia fact, it shows up, of course, in the amazing movie The Wizard, which was, I believe, before this. They are playing the Nintendo version, but in an arcade cabinet, just as an FYI. So they're advertising a Nintendo game, but it's in the arcade cabinet. But that makes sense, because they're trying to advertise Nintendo games in that movie. They got carte blanche to use all Nintendo IP, so that makes sense there. So this was an absurdly popular game in the late 80s, early 90s. And by 1994, you're like, what the hell? Who wants this, right? So they aimed it at kids, and this falls into this fun thing of like, the actual target audience you would have wanted for this movie maybe is nostalgic people, but they're not old enough yet.
No, there is no nostalgia for a series that's still coming out,
But I guess what I'm saying is like, now, if you go for He-Man, you got adults like us and we're like, hell yeah, my childhood, I'll lay down money on that. You can't go to 14-year-olds and say, remember that thing from 7 years ago you loved? You don't have money to spend on it, and you don't care enough about it yet. So that's the thing. They targeted it at kids. The kids that would have grown up with this game are now teenagers and don't care.
Sort of. So here's what I'm going to add. And here's, I think, something that's important. First off, that the Double Dragon game franchise was still moving forward. It was still happening. So there is that. That's important to know.
Yes, Super Double Dragon came out for the Super Nintendo.
And Battletoads Double Dragon was also like, so they were clearly moving forward with these things. What is interesting to know is that the director wanted to make a PG movie. And when they got their rating back and it came back, because he was like, this is clearly a movie for kids. Like, this is a movie for children. We got to make it for children. And you can tell it's very childish, right? There are scenes like anytime you see a movie where a bunch of kids are like in some form of power, which we're going to see towards the end of the movie. But that he does that because he's like, yeah, this is a movie for kids. It's supposed to be PG. It came back PG-13. And like, I don't even think they tried. They were like, I guess it's PG-13. Like, it seemed like the production company didn't care.
This was
Up to-
PG-13?
Yes, which is like also strange. It's probably because of the action violence. I think here's my theory. The MPAA was a little bit more firm in the mid 90s, the early to mid 90s, about rating systems because of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 1 was, I believe, PG, and a lot of kids that saw that PG movie kicked the shit out of each other. And the MPAA kind of got like, this shouldn't have been PG. What are you guys doing? So like, I think they were a little more strict.
Makes sense. Oh, by the way, Jeff, if we're running down, we're going to be all over the place to start this episode before we get to
Just
the actual
like the
plot.
movie.
Perfect. You're right, Jeff. But the writers are absurd. And there's one I really want to talk about. But let's say the three writers, Paul Dini, Neil Schusterman, and Michael Davis. One of Michael Davis's credits before this was he worked on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, I believe, like with props and stuff as like a producer. So one of I think the issue with this movie is actually very similar to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, also a former episode of Nerd. Check it out. But in that movie, as we discussed, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the first one comes out, and this is based on a comic, but it's not really a kid's comic. But of course, kids love it. But part of what they love is that it is a grounded story, adult themes, really cool. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle 2 comes out, and they're basically told by focus groups, by now the studio, because the studio's like, oh my gosh, this is worth money. You can't do all of this stuff. And so it's kind of handcuffed, but it still makes money. 2 does, 3, I have no idea what the heck they were thinking there. Double Dragon kind of got the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 treatment, literally coming after Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, having to deal with all the things, literally having someone that worked on that thing as one of the writers of it, but without laying the groundwork of a good first movie anybody would want to see.
No, this is, if you asked a child to make Demolition Man, you'd kind of get like, it has bad Demolition Man plot settings without the man from back in time comes for, but like the city of New Angeles, the way they created in Double Dragon is the worst version you could possibly do of San Angeles from Demolition Man.
Actually, Jeff, I think you've nailed what this movie really is in a weird combination of way. This is like if you had to watch your kid's grade school, put on a play version of, you're right, Demolition Man, perfect pick, and just inexplicably one of the parents happened to be really, really good at like special effects or something. So like that, like, and so it's like, yeah, you have this like weird mismatch of some really good special effects in part of a really weird story that you're like, is this really a kid's story? And then you're watching a bunch of kids act it in some place and you're like, what is going on? That you literally described this movie, Jeff. That is perfect.
It's like a Fox Kids afternoon TV show. Like it legitimately has high budget Power Ranger energy, which they probably were also trying to like get a hold of. Like it has Power Ranger vibes to it. The bright colors, the really sloppy martial arts, but the martial arts alone, I mean, Double Dragon is obviously known for that.
Really? You say slop? I thought it didn't look.
Are you doing a bit right now? Like the amount of heavy lifting that Mark Dacascos is doing in this is insane because every ounce of action from every actor that is not Mark Dacascos is the most embarrassing thing I've ever seen.
I don't know. I didn't think it was. I mean, I was even like doing slow motion on some, like they didn't look horrible. It wasn't great by any means, but I'll also throw this. The budget of this movie was $8 million. I think they spent it all on the boat chase. We'll get to that in a second.
They put a lot into that boat chase,
which is great. I'm looking forward to that scene when we get there. It was only $8 million. The costumes didn't look great at one point. I'm sorry. We got to get going on the actual plot because we're just saying this up. But like at one point, one of the people in the movie literally says about this medallion, the core focus of the movie, that it looks like a cheap piece of jewelry. So like a person in this movie is literally insulting the low grade prop design. So yeah, this movie is just it's so all over because like I said, it'd be like, yeah, if you happen to have a car or something someone could borrow for a kid's show, so the car's really good. And then like the sets are like made out of, cardboard and stuff. So it's like this really weird juxtapose of like, this is really good, that's really bad. Last note before we maybe get going, I wanted to just throw this out, Jeff. Mark Dacascos is amazing. And then I was going to say, if you need a palate, if you don't listen to me and Jeff, don't watch this movie. But
Don't.
if you do, while you are on YouTube, if you get to the end of this movie, you're like, oh my God, I need a palate cleanser. Like I saw clips of like Mark doing like the secret ingredient for Iron Chef. Those are a delight.
Oh, yeah.
So like if you need a palate cleanser,
And dude, what about his work with John Wick, right? Like, I mean, that really was one of those ones too, where like, I think I recall like John, like he was like, it should be a tie. Like Keanu was like, I should not beat him. If I
That's
recall,
awesome.
like, because he respects Dacascos so much.
well, but he's amazing. And I think that is part of it. I was going to throw out, I thought when I was watching this movie, I was like, you know what? He would have been an amazing Ryu for Street Fighter. And I've got to laugh. It's like, what if he was committed to this movie?
He,
If they wanted.
Mark and Ernie Reyes Jr. both, I think, are the two like really bright flares of martial arts acting that burned, that like their fame burned in ways that like other people that might have been less deserving, Steven Seagal, um, like they got pushes that, I mean, you can also see who the martial arts stars that really are pushed in the 90s, they tend to be white men.
Mhm.
And then and it took like Jackie Chan's Rumble in the Bronx to be ported over before people started to be like, yeah. What about people from where martial arts started, or from these areas? There definitely is a hint of racism, in my
Not even a
opinion,
question. Yeah, I agree
that
100%.
that Mark and Ernie did not get bigger pushes. I think, Ernie has talked about it in the past that Surf Ninjas was considered the death knell in his coffin because he was told that he can't sell a movie, when the reality is they were trying to sell a movie that's really bad, and they released it up
actually, I would
again.
say Surf Ninjas and this movie are so similar in that you watch them and you are like, this is a terrible movie. But then you were saying, Mark in this movie, literally his skill and ability was enough where I was like, yeah, I don't have complaints with his fighting
He
scenes.
looks like
He is
he's in a
good.
different movie. Like every other person doing action is so bad, and it's like I'm watching it and seeing like like it's funny when you can see like when Scott Wolf's stunt guy is doing the work, it's just so bad. But like the punches are thrown from really awkward spots, the kicks and the sweeps and everything is so sloppy. The weapon play is sloppy, and it clearly looks like a bunch of untrained in combat acting actors are trying desperately to make action without ever having thrown a punch in their lives.
And you realize how wild that is because with Mark Dacascos, with I'm forgetting the actor's name, I'll try and get up in front of me, but Huey and Lewis, they're both
Al
well
Leong.
known. Yeah.
Oh
They're
yeah,
both,
Al Long. So like Al Long being in this, by the way, he's like a meme at this point in time where they're like, if you see this guy in a movie, shit's about to go down. He was famously in Die Hard. He's the guy that eats the candy bar while they're waiting in Die Hard.
Shit.
He's also Genghis Khan.
Yep.
In,
Yep.
in
Good
Bill
memory.
and
Yeah.
Ted.
Bill and Ted. Yeah.
Al Leong is one of the best. He's like in the henchman Hall of Fame.
Which is great because he's a henchman in this. And then Jeff Amata is the other is, yeah, Jeff is Huey. So Jeff is Huey, Al is Lewis.
Yes.
Then ironically, so here's what's funny. There's a character from the game, one of the few. So Lash and the Bobo are the only villains from the game.
Lash is the whip lady.
Yeah. So is it Nils? Let me get it right. Nils Allen Stewart is a Bobo in human form. And he is a stunt coordinator. Like he did like Scorpion King, The Mask. If you look at his stunts, like his resume, if you go to IMDb, it's just 148 movies, right? Just stunts and everything. He is huge. Now, what's funny is he's like the huge stunt guy, but then a Bobo gets transformed, and you kind of get in another funny place where You get, I think it's Henry Kingi, I think is how you say it. And he is super known for like, I'm missing the guy's name who was in Doom, but same kind of thing, like the creature effect actor,
Yeah.
huge for that. So same kind of idea. So Double Dragon has a lot of talent in terms of stunts. And they focus on Scott Wolf and Alyssa Milano.
And they blew it.
Yes.
And Scott Wolf and Alyssa Milano, God, I mean, you know they got Alyssa Milano. Like Alyssa Milano and Robert Patrick is their budget, right? Like at that
And the
point in
stunts,
time.
I think that's everything, right? Yeah.
And the river. Um, yeah, it is definitely one of those things where you're watching it and you're just like, I don't think nobody in this movie is making the same movie, if that makes sense. I feel like everybody in this movie is making a different version of the movie. And it lacks the cohesion, and this is going to sound really bad. It even lacks the cohesion of like Street Fighter. Like, and that's a really low bar to set. Is that like at least Street Fighter and Doom, their plots might have been a little convoluted, but they maintained consistency.
I think
This
we noticed this is huge to D'Souza for Street Fighter. What is great about that movie, and I have so many props from after the fact. He realized what was going on and turned into the skid.
he
The movie
made camp. Yeah.
starts-
Yeah.
The movie starts, and he was basically like, "We can't make the movie we want to because of all the logistical problems. If we steer into the camp, we at least have something." And one thing that was really nice, because I did listen to the director's commentary on Street Fighter. I don't know, it was fun, Jeff. And I did do a little more research after, and like he protected his actors and stuff, right? In his interviews, he's not complaining about Jean-Claude Van Damme or anything. He is literally complimenting everybody. So it's like the director of that movie was like, what the hell is going on? Okay, what can we do with this?
Yeah.
And this movie didn't feel like this. And this isn't like a dig, but the director of Double Dragon is James Yukich. I hope I'm getting the name right. And a tell about him, not in a bad way, is he's done a lot of music videos. And this really reminds me of, I don't know if it's Aliens 3 or Alien 3. I don't remember how they did it.
Alien
But
3.
Alien 3. So in Alien 3, I heard that was an issue, like for better or for worse, right? You know, Buffy writer wrote the script and it got torn apart. And basically that movie was studio notes, the movie, Alien 3.
Yeah.
And they had problems with the first director, and they basically hired a commercial director, someone who did commercials, because they're like, you're going to listen to us. So I'm feeling Double Dragon is the same way. They
I
got a
think you are
director.
burying the lead on who that commercial director is, though. David Fincher. Isn't it?
But that was
David
when he was young, before he had the authority.
Sure, but I mean, you know, that would be like having Tarantino do your first, you know, like doing his first movie or whatever. Like,
But I'm saying the
it was
key is-
ruined by the studio.
But that's what I'm saying is the studio said, we got studio notes. We want someone who's going to listen to us. Double Dragon's got a similar thing. They didn't have a D'Souza who's like, okay, how can I, what the hell can I do to at least get something serviceable out of it? They basically had people that followed all the notes, did what they were told. And then the end is like, all of these notes were terrible.
Now, I'm going to circle back and actually throw a success story of the exact same background, which is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, directed by a music video director. But that guy, you know, could work within the confines of what he had, and he knew what he was doing. Like, that's the other part of it too, is like,
I think he got kicked. Didn't he get kicked for movie 2 though, if I recall? Like Teenage
well,
Mutant Ninja
I
Turtles.
think he walked because of what they wanted. He's like, that's not what
Yeah.
we're doing. No. But either way, it's fine. So we should start talking about this movie here.
All right, let's get to it. Actually, Jeff, let's do something before us. So Nerd, we got producers, Jeff. This is awesome.
Ew.
You are all awesome for jumping on. So, Jeff, I've got them in front of me on the script.
Yeah, I'll read the first half of that. How about
Okay.
how's that sound? Okay, so I want to give a big, huge shout out to the enchanted, wandering, unpierced, left nipple cider served at room temperature. Thank you for the show. Norm from Cheers. Thank you so much for being a producer. Bimmy and Jimmy out fighting crime. Thank you.
You want to explain the reference? But that's
We will. We'll get there. We'll come back to that. Just remember Bimmy and Jimmy out fighting crime. How about MikeSlater.com? Fucking up search results for the right-wing radio host that shares my name since 2007.
Mike Slater, the author of or writer, whatever you want to call it, whatever you call musicians who write things. Uh, the theme
Composer?
song for I Must Break You. Composer. Thank you, Jeff. I knew there was a word.
There we go. We got
Mike
that.
Slater, composer of the I Must Break You theme song.
And my last name that I'm going to say is I'm going to start calling Yoda Old Grogu just to see what happens. Dre?
Me, I think with calling old Grogu Baby Yoda old, or calling Yoda old Grogu, everyone's no, Grogu's stupid. Anyway, all right. So, and you're not on a show where you're not allowed to say that anymore, Jeff. So that's fun. All right. Next up, we got Burrito. Long time, love being here. Ricky Cilantro. We got like a baking theme going together. Next one, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 show co-host, Dan's Ninja Turtle Ooze. Dan, thank you. And last one, Porcelain Jesus.
Shout out
Porcelain
to all of
Jesus.
you for wonderfully producing this show. And if you want to be a producer of Nerd, head on over to patreon.com/Jeff May, where we have so many different tiers where you can do so many different things on this network. You can get stuff in the mail. You can produce Nerd. You can produce Jeff Has Cool Friends. You can have a good time for a very low amount of money. Now, Dre, we also have 2 honorary producers that we've added on, 2 people that have gone above and beyond to make the show happen, to make it work, to do this. People that did not ask for this, but I am going to give a big shout out to my Mint on Card co-producer, Lisa Harden, who has incidentally loaned me her apartment to record this show because I woke up without power this morning. She did not know that I was here recording this. I forgot to tell her. She walked in as we were about to record and was like, what the is happening? So, and I was like, you didn't even know that we're going to make you a producer of the show because of this. But shout out to Lisa Harden, my co-producer at Mint on Card and one of my absolute best friends in the world.
All right. And then next up, we got Walker, who is the unofficial producer of I Must Break You, Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Pacific time. So go watch Jeff break stuff. Walker's just been amazing, has given you some cool stuff on that show to break. At some point in the future, we might do tiers, not in the immediate thing. So for now, just go on to patreon.com/Jeff May. You can produce this show. You can help with the other amazing stuff, pack breaking, long form interviews, Ugg Fine with Kim Crawl, on to Double Dragon. I'm going to take the wheel, Jeff, and then I'll just let you cut in or tell me if I'm going too slow or too fast. And we've got lots of stuff to go on.
There's so much going on because this doesn't have a cohesive plot.
I'm going to read a few things. So sorry, Jeff. This is the opening scroll text of the movie. So I do have to read this. And this is read. This is read by Robert Patrick in the movie Terminator 2, and spoiler, the big bad in this movie. Thousands of years ago in ancient China, an evil army of shadow warriors terrorized the great city of Changsha. I hope I got that right. To save his people, the good king sacrificed himself to create a mystical medallion. Realizing the ultimate powers of the medallion, the king split it in half. To one son, he gave the power over body, to other, the power over soul. This is the legend of Double Dragon. Jeff, you would think that would be enough. You would think we don't have to explain why there are 2 medallions, but spoiler, we will. All right. So as you already noted, when you tried to do the quick thing, we start in China and it looks ancient, but it's modern day. And some ninjas in, I like your metaphor, Power Rangers ass costumes are beating up some monks in this village.
They're like
saying, "Where's the
bedazzled
medallion?"
ninjas. Yeah.
I love it. Where's the medallion? You'll never find it, says one. Well, a guy in plain view runs out of sight to a giant room that is like, they had time, man. This was like they were planning a date night. Fully candled up in a giant dragon head, where in the middle of this giant bright cave room, there is a medallion, half of the medallion, hanging off of a statue. And then Lucy Lawless looking woman comes in. She was the ninja. So on the horse, she pulls off her thing. She uses a fancy,
she's the hottest ninja who has ever lived.
Did you get like Lucy Lawless vibes kind of a little bit? And the actress who plays, this is Lash, is the person. This is Christina Wagner. I mean, she is just a prolific like soap opera star, has been on General Hospital for 20 years. So great actress and knows what's up. She just does soap operas. So I was like, what else has she done? And I'm like, oh yeah, the exact same thing for 20 years. But she was one of the few good parts of this movie and is underutilized. That's the thing. But she used like a fancy future phone to tell Shuko, we got the medallion. All right. So we meet Robert Patrick, the villain.
Robert Patrick, the villain, who looks
He's
like
glorious. He is glorious, Jeff.
he looks like what if Vanilla Ice became like a worse villain? Like, I don't know how to describe, like, he looks like he's got the bleach blonde flat top hair, the jet black Van Dyke beard. He looks like he has a I don't know. I don't want to say that. I'll get deplatformed on YouTube if I say that. He looks like a scumbag. How about that? Like, he looks like an absolute piece of trash.
Which is true, but he is great. And by the way, just a funny note, I kind of mentioned this in the side notes, but he had just come off of T2 and had a lot of behind the scenes issues. He said this is on the Rosenbaum Inside of You show podcast did about a year ago, where he said he was an alcoholic at that time, has gotten clean since, so good on him. But basically got T2, he like sobered up for that, killed it, iconic performance. And when he was done, he was like, "Oh shit, I am typecast. Like I am going to be T2 forever." Not wrong. And so even was like, "Man, I got to do something different if I want to, make a name for myself in the industry." So I was funny because I was listening. I was like, that almost explains this because he's like, how can I give myself a different look than I had in T2 and act much different? Because in T2, he's very stoic, perfect. In this, he does, looks like a Fed, which explains why he goes off to be John Doggett. In this, though, he's trying to do something else, which kind of explains what's going on, just as an FYI.
Yeah, like, he seems like the kind of guy, he's leaning into the camp of this probably the most. Like,
I got a question. What do you think of this? I liked his performance in this movie. I thought it was good. But again, everybody's doing a different movie.
nobody
No?
has a good, you can't have a good performance in this movie. Mark Dacascos has great martial arts. Nobody has a good performance in this movie.
That's maybe Christina Wagner, but she just like the henchmen
No.
are actually great, but they just don't do anything.
Yeah, they don't, like, nobody has a good, you can't have a good performance in this movie. Like, you just can't.
I guess I can agree with that point.
It's not it because it's not as like Raul Julia had a great performance in Street Fighter because he leaned into it and was so aggressively over the top that you just couldn't not see it. But this, nobody saves this movie. Not nobody.
And it's a bummer because there is some amazing, I mean, even Scott Wolf, maybe not the maybe Scott Wolf and Alyssa Milano, maybe not the martial arts leads you want, but they are great actors. So like this
They're
movie
good
had
actors.
some,
I wouldn't go so far as to call them great actors, but they're good working actors.
yep. All right. But anyway,
Sorry.
so
If they're
Robert
do they
Patrick,
listen to the show? Did I just offend you?
yeah, if we lose, like, if you're like, who's Alyssa as the producer? And why'd she stop sponsoring Jeff Has Cool Friends? Now you know, Jeff.
Whoops.
All right. So Robert Patrick, the story we just heard that had to be text, he elaborates on and says that the Suns used the medallion to win against the Shadow Warriors. And when they were done, they split up the medallion because it was too powerful, right? So we have now, in the span of 5 minutes, been told that this medallion has been split up, right? Including by the villain who read the intro text and just told us that story. And then he is angry when he discovers that he only has half of the medallion from Lash. But so I was, again, like, no cohesion. He squashes it in his hand. It almost looks like he crushes it, but I guess he doesn't.
But instead,
he-
like, terrible special effect lighting comes out from his fingers.
Yeah. Later we'll learn that he basically is turning himself into a shadow being. But at this point, he just kind of like flickers and it looks really weird. And he's like, "Get me the other half of the medallion." We cut to the other half of the medallion.
I'll add, he's basically already given himself the powers of a god, and he's so annoyed.
Oh my, how,
When I was watching
anyway.
that for the second time, I was like, you got half of one of the rarest, most powerful things on the planet, and you're such a bitch about it.
He is such a weep. And I mean, that is true because his real name we'll discover is Geisman, Victor Geisman, and he calls himself Shuko and says he's the reincarnation of a Chinese warlord. And he wants all of this Asian stuff. So it's like, absolutely. Okay. But anyway, we go to the other half of the medallion, which is just conspicuously around the neck of Satori Amada, who, I don't know, Jeff, we'll get there. Anyway, so she's in the movie and she's at a martial arts tournament where it's a tag team fight with with Jimmy and Billy, played by Scott Wolf.
A tag
Scott Wolf is
team
Billy.
martial arts tournament.
It's a thing. So
And also, they're like, not great. They're okay. at martial arts, but they're not even establishing how dominant they are. They're not that dominant. Like,
Yeah, because what happens is Billy and Jimmy are fighting. Billy is Scott Wolf, Jimmy is Mark Dacascos. Oh my God. And they're like tied, right? In the last round, like tied up. And Billy tags himself in, showboats, gets DQ'd. Billy and Jimmy are mad at each other. And we do
he
get something.
showboats by giving the guy a noogie, by the way. Like,
Is that a DQable offense in a turn? I don't know.
I don't know. Is that a martial arts maneuver? It doesn't seem like a strike, so maybe. But also, he might be being disqualified for being a childish asshole.
Which is more than fair.
Yeah.
And then what we do get, by the way, Jeff, you covered this a little, but basically this takes place post a giant earthquake that knocked half of Los Angeles into the water. We don't need this story, but it's part of the backstory, and all the actors and the behind the scenes know it, and the movie just kind of tries to do it. I don't get it.
Can I make a convenient theory?
What do you got?
A lot easier to film in Canada when everything is underwater, as opposed to having to show that you're in Los Angeles.
You can just lie. I mean, this movie's bad enough. You can just lie and say you're in LA and no one's going to get mad at you.
But I mean, it would be easy to say. I'm not saying that that's definitely the reason they did it, but it is pretty convenient that they can have a riverboat chase on Hollywood and Vine or what, like, or on like Wilshire Boulevard or something, like, because the tides go so deep into Los Angeles. Like, it's convenient. You can film in Vancouver instead of paying LA money to film. It can save you so much money by having this.
And this movie only had an $8 million budget, so that's it. But anyway, so we're told that the backstory of this movie is giant earthquake, half of Los Angeles is underwater. Right after the quake, basically a bunch of gangs took control of the city. The police weren't able to hold them. The federal government didn't want to help. So the police had formed kind of like an unstable alliance where the gangs agree only to terrorize at night. So during the day, we can have martial arts tournaments. And there's still aftershocks, quakes from this giant earthquake that still happen. And there's lots of water everywhere. So that's the
like
story.
A weird little subplot is that there are constant aftershock tremors throughout. But then they also stop. Like, do them the beginning of the movie, and then they just stop having those tremors.
Yeah, why not? Because in this martial arts tournament, like in the middle of the tournament, the building starts shaking, and they've reinforced the walls with like a beam that they can like jack up or down as
with
needed.
A little person that does it, which is like such an interesting choice. Where they were like, a little person jack the. Like, that's the thing too, is like the solution for not having your house fall apart is to buy jacks, like a pump jack, and they even do a commercial for it on the news. Because we're about to hit the news, and buddy, I have notes.
All right, let's okay. So this is where you can put a majority of the talk about this. So another weird back part of this movie is we have celebrities on the news, like Vanna White's on the news. Andy Dick is a weather man.
So George Hamilton and Vanna White are the anchors, and they are George Hamilton and Vanna White. They're not playing characters. Now, this is, I'm going to assume, a sort of nod to RoboCop with Lisa Gibbons.
Because you even have like the weird commercials too,
Yes.
like the Jack one you just said.
It's very RoboCop. So it's Vanna White, and then you're sitting there and you're like, what Mad Libs ass script are they doing with casting where they got these two people? Like, and then they're like, and let's go over to weather, Andy. And it's Andy Dick playing Andy Dick, not a character. He's literal Andy Dick in this. It is. I watched that and I was just like, what the absolute hell is happening right now?
So much of this movie, by the way, is, if you're watching it, don't want to be like too mean about it or jokey, but just like, you're like, am I having a stroke? So much of this movie, you're just like, you watch a scene and you're like, is this really happening? And then, we get the weird things, but the news, it's channel 69. Haha, Jeff.
Get it?
Will routinely kind of pop in to give us information. So we are basically told, hey, tonight's daylight savings time. You're not supposed to be out after dark. That's explaining this curfew thing. We do have some cuts to like gangs getting ready to go out, the police doing it. And it turns out that Billy, by getting everybody in a fight at the tournament, kept them out late. And so now they're out after curfew. Another thing not explained, Jeff, in this movie is the Double Dragon brothers have the Dragon Mobile, which is a trappy old car, but with like a trash converter that can make it go faster.
Okay, so it is. Ecto-1 with Mr. Fusion inside, complete with a Batmobile rocket on the back. Or the
Were they
Batmobile
hoping
engine.
for like toys out of them? I don't.
It's they're through there. I mean, there were Double Dragon toys, I believe, in this, but it's definitely one of those things where it seems like they're just patchworking stuff from movies that were actually good and throwing it together. One thing that we don't mention um, is how Julian Nixon is their like mom
So that
guardian.
was Satori, sorry, and she has the other half of the medallion.
She's you might know her from like Rambo 2.
She's in Sidekicks too,
She
is
was
where
in
I know her from
she
Big
was
Save
in
Me.
Sidekicks. I think she was in The Golden Child as well. Was she
Jeez.
in The Golden Child? I think I remembered that. But yeah, she's in charge of them. She's like their chaperone parent, but also she's like not old enough to be my parent. Like she took care, like both of her parents are dead and she's their guardian.
So she is the exact same age as Robert Patrick when this movie was filmed, which is about 36. In the movie, the Lee brothers are supposed to be 17, and you and I both did this, Jeff, where you like listen for background cues. Mark is either 18 or 15. I'm pretty sure it's 18, but I couldn't tell because they briefly have a scene where they're telling age. So Scott Wolf, who was 26 at the time of filming, is supposed to be a 17-year-old. Mark Dacascos, who is 30 at the time of filming, is supposed to be 18. And then Julia Nixon, who is supposed to be their guardian, is 36, and Robert Patrick is also 36. The backstory there, so we can save some time in the future, is their dad was an archaeologist who found the Double Dragon medallion put back together. We don't know how it's put back together, by the way, but he did. He was working apparently with Victor Geisman, Robert Patrick, who plays Shuko, and Satori, played by Julia Nixon. So they were all there together. He died, and she agreed to take care of the kids. And also, he gave her the medallion. She broke it up, sent half of it to China to those monks who don't know how to defend it, and kept the other half of it in safekeeping around her neck. And later, we'll discover more with that. So that's the backstory we are given, is that their dad died in an archaeology thing. She was there with him, working with him and Shuko, and she agreed to take care of the kids and the medallion. We don't understand. So, I mean, maybe she was like a 17-year-old
So much
grad. It doesn't, I don't know, Jeff.
ridiculous
I don't know.
backstory. Talk about superfluous information that you did not need to put in your movie. Like it's
And it is
so insane to me.
All right. So they're driving home in the Ecto-1 after dark. For whatever reason, Billy sees a woman bending over by her car. This movie is in love with butts. This is not the first butt thing.
Oh,
And tells-
we get some butts later.
You get lots of butts in this movie. He tells Jimmy to pull over, and Jimmy listens. Like, we're literally just told you're out after curfew. This isn't safe. He's like, hey, that woman has a butt. Can you pull over so I can catcall her? I don't know. He does, and it's not a woman. We get a bad 90s joke, Jeff. Moving on. And it's really a gang member in disguise. And it was an ambush. So
It was
we get the Mohawks gang. We are introduced to Bob Abobo, who is from the game. In the game,
not Bob Abobo, by the way.
Isn't it Bob Abobo?
It's Bo Abobo.
Bo Abobo. Okay. So that's terrible. Okay, so we get Bo Abobo,
and
who's
his
this giant
sidekick,
guy.
one of the kids from the Weird Science TV show.
Really? Okay.
He
From
was
the show.
Gary or Wyatt. I forget which one. Yeah.
Huh.
And I also think that's the guy. He might have ended up becoming Jenny McCarthy's first husband, if I recall.
Okay, man, it's so hard not to. I had IMDb open. We talked IMDb to start, and I'm still going to wind up down. That's John Asher, right? So with that being said, I was just looking at IMDb. Bobo, who we discovered, because everybody in this movie has like automatic identifiers of people. So in their car, they have a computer that identifies the Mohawk gang. And we're told he can bench press 800 pounds. So he's 6'3", giant guy. And they're like, hey, give us some money. They're like, we don't have any money. They're like, hey, give us that medallion. Because, yeah, again, the super rare, ultra important medallion. We haven't heard the backstory yet, but regardless, after hearing it, we know this this ultra rare medallion she's just wearing around her neck. He's like, give me the medallion. He grabs it. She like hits him and they speed off. And we get this elongated car chase scene between, it's almost Twisted Metal. We got this truck with like teeth as a grill against the Ecto-1 car we already described. There's a joke, a recurring joke that pops up. They use their ID to identify the Lee brothers. And, the sidekick is like, hey, they're ugging home, ugly, homely. Ha ha ha.
I would also add that his first wife was Vanessa Lee Asher, who was from Weird Science.
Huh. There's a lot of weird science.
Vanessa Angel, she goes by now. And then he married Jenny McCarthy. So this dude did great.
And, all thanks to the power of the Double Dragon. So again, this movie was bizarre in that we get this elongated car chase scene to the point, Jeff, where I did rewatches of all three games. They're relatively short, like the first 4 ones I watched them. I was like, were there car chases in the Double Dragon games? No. This movie, though, has a really weird long car chase where during part of the car chase scene, they throw a map out and it goes over the window and they say, oh, we have to go to VR mode. So he's literally playing a video game car chase, the villains, Abobo.
The CG graphics that they add into this movie, because we're going to see one later where a kid is on a VR roller coaster through New York City, and it is
for no reason.
Or excuse me, Old York City.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. So they're chasing them, and one point, they throw a can of Cheese Whiz into the little super engine and goes super fast. Wind up crashing, though. They get out of the car. There's some Native American jokes. They have mohawks. You get it, ha ha. They scare the guys off, but it turns out they didn't scare them off. Alyssa Milano and her team of the Power Corps,
the Burger King Kids Club, saved him. Power Corps is a gang of children
led by Alyssa Milano, in disguise, kind of.
The Mohawks should have just beaten the shit out of them.
That would have been hilarious.
They would have had no problem with that.
But they're like, let's get out of here. They leave. They drop the device I was just talking about that lets people look up information. Alyssa Milano bends over to pick it up very gratuitously, and the movie lets us know, and the movie focuses on the brother watching her do this for the first of 2 times.
Yeah, she has what the laymen refer to as a juicy ass.
I think that's in the subtitles of the movie. But basically, she's like, I came here for this device that this gang has. She gets it. She's like, hey, you guys should team up with us. Marion and Billy. So she's Marion. So by the way, Marion in the games is the damsel that is kidnapped in the first game. By the way, Jeff, I'll use this as the brief off-ramp to talk the weird progression of her in the games. Game 1, Marion is kidnapped and they have to fight to get her back. Game 2, Marion is shot in the beginning of the game. The game opens with her dying and you're going to avenge her death. And the game ends, the sub scene is like, and an angel brought Marion back to life. The end. You're like, what? That's how. So the game itself gets off the rails pretty quickly too. We're insulting the weird plot of the movie. The games they are based on are also wild. In 3, there is an old woman that said, Marion has disappeared. If you collect 3 power stones, I will help you find Marion. We get to the end of the game. The evil old woman was trying to use the stones for her own power, but there were 4 stones. So she inadvertently kills herself. With all 4 stones, you discover that Marion has been possessed by an ancient princess who is guarding Cleopatra's treasure.
Perfect. Thank you, Double Dragon 3.
You free Marion from the curse and get Cleopatra's treasure. And then Super Double Dragon, the one that came out right before this, they just beat up Shadow Warriors and clean up the city. So there's this weird thing with Marion in the game being the damsel in the first couple of games. And then we also have a cartoon and comic book that come out around the same time. They must have really thought people were going to love Double Dragon IP. And in that, Marion is like, works with the police. So her character goes all over the place. In this movie, she leaves I love it, Jeff, the Burger King Kids Club, trying to convince them to team up. Does not happen.
This movie makes me so tired.
All right, Jeff. Now, I hate to tell you that the movie is going to amp it to 11 in just a second.
Sure is. It sure is.
Okay, so Shuko, we're back at Shuko's lair and he's talking to Abobo. And Abobo is literally they didn't invest in prop design. That did not look like an ancient medallion. It looked really cheap and fake. Spend money on your props movie. And Shuko is really angry and is like, you need to find the medallion. You messed up. You need to help me with this. He does have a good line where he says, Abobo, you're like a son to me. In that, if I lose you, I can always make another one. And I was like, that's all right.
Yeah, if
Decent line.
that's the best line the movie gets, we're in trouble.
That
Spoiler alert, it's the
I
best.
would agree. That
Yeah.
probably is the best line in the movie. But he
And
basically
also, spoiler alert, we are very much in trouble.
oh, we're going down that line. So basically, he tells a Bobo he has a new steroids project that can give a Bobo the strength of 10 men. Bobo says, I already have the strength of 10 men. You do that, it'll probably kill me. This scene makes no sense because we cut away to like a chair. Like we basically have a Captain America scene. And the chair opens up and a Bobo just screams. And this is, by the way, something I hate in this movie is you have all of these tough guys. You have fourth degree black belts, super tough gang members, and then they still like freak out to stuff that would not freak them out. And it just totally doesn't make sense. But
They also get manhandled by people they could beat the shit out of.
well, I mean, we do know it. Well, in the very near future, we're going to learn about Shuko that the power of that medallion has made him essentially, as you know, a god. Um, and he is super rich, so there could be something there. But again, yeah, it doesn't really make sense that you have this big tough guy. To shout out to a good movie, Adventures in Babysitting, other great nerd episodes. There's so many great episodes of Nerd you could listen to instead of this one. Go to the backlog. In that we basically have this carjacker that works for a gang, and the entire movie he's just laughing at these old guys that are trying to bully him because he's like, I'm a gang member that can steal cars, and you're an old guy. Are you really going to threaten me? That's probably a little too much, but still, regardless, attitude a Bobo should have in this movie. We wind up back at the headquarters. It turns out that the Lee brothers and Satori live in an abandoned theater.
Yeah, which is like well known. Like it's in the database where they live is in this abandoned theater.
And it maybe makes sense in, a post-apocalyptic, if all the apartments went down and you just want to find a place that has it. They're working on a move. This is going to be a Chekhov's gun kind of, Jeff, that they're failing. They're getting mad at each other. They're practicing. That's on how that move works. I hope we figure that move out before the end of the movie.
Yeah, it's that one where they hold each other's wrists and like the other throws the other into kick. It's ridiculous.
It's a thing. So anyway, at this point, Satori is like, yeah, I'm going to tell you about this medallion. This medallion's really important. Your dad died for it. I split it up in two. Here, Scott Wolf, like of the two, you've got this important medallion that you need defended. You can give it to Scott Wolf or Iron Chef, who Keanu Reeves is like, this guy's too good. I can't lose to him. It's got to be a draw. And she chooses Scott Wolf.
The guy who was so impulsive, he noogied his enemy to lose the fight.
Yes. But she's like, this medallion is really important. Your dad died for it. Here, you have it. There's a knock at the door. She just opens it. Why not? And it is Shuko and gang. And this is where we get a lot of that backstory. I'm Victor Geisman, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. And he's basically like, I want the medallion. And she's like, you'll never find it. He opens his shirt and reveals he has half of it. Uh-oh. And then Scott Wolf, I love Scott Wolf. He's actually a good actor, done a lot of voice thing, but like in this movie, he's the one you're supposed to hate for obvious reasons. He like walks and was like, what's going on? And he's got the medallion around his neck. And just a fight breaks out, Jeff, and it's so stupid. Like we have serious stunt actors that are good martial artists, and we have them fighting with like gumballs that they're knocking out with all of these props in this abandoned theater. If you want to comment at all, it's a bad fight.
Okay. Bad fight. All right. So let's talk about the prop fight, shall we? There's only one scene that shows more who this movie is made for. And that is the scene when they fall into the Chuck E. Cheese that is the Get Up Kids or whatever the hell this gang's
Power
name is.
Core, yeah.
The Power Core. That even sounds like anyway. The amount of like prop fighting and like at one point Billy's throwing basketballs at these guys. They drop a curtain on them. It's like, what if slapstick was the unfunniest thing you've ever seen?
I was going to say, like, you mentioned Jackie Chan, and it's funny where I would say Jackie Chan is the perfection of this, where the character can be serious and overwhelmed. So Jackie Chan does this perfect thing where he is competent.
He's level 10.
Shows that he's overwhelmed. So like he does act freaked out. And then we do get slapstick stuff out of necessity. That's how you do it. What you don't do is have the characters act like you cannot have the character act slapstick while doing slapstick stuff when we are told that they are serious. Yeah. And that's what's happening here.
Well, I was going to say Jackie Chan made a decision in his career that paid off really well, which was if I try to be Bruce Lee, I will just become another one of these failed clones of Bruce Lee. What if I took Bruce Lee, his skill, which Jackie Chan, pretty comparable. What if I took that skill and reversed, like did the literal opposite? Because Jackie Chan, when you would see Bruce Lee, he was always very cocky in the movies, and he was very confident, and he knew what he was doing. And Jackie Chan is like low key, just trying to get out of every fight he's in. He's like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to fight. I feel like a coward, but I'm going to freak out and do whatever I can to get me out of this position. And that was really, really brilliant. And that's why he elevated to 10, because he had the skill and then he brings that behavior into it, and it makes a great juxtaposition of talent. This is that behavior with none of the skill. And in doing that, we get an unfunny clown show.
Another part of this fight, and this is just a running thing in this movie, which drives me wild, is fight ends. Jimmy knocks out one of the henchmen. Billy comes up behind him, shuts a case shut, doesn't do anything with the case. The case doesn't hit the guy. It just shuts. And he says, what a real head case. This movie loves puns that aren't even good puns out of nowhere. And by the way, we didn't really get down this in my research. I couldn't find anything, but it is wild that Paul Dini, who is one of the writers of Batman, the Animated Series, his resume is filled with amazing Batman DC work since then. Mm-hmm. He's at least credited first. I don't know if that's alphabetical or what, but he is credited as the lead author on this movie. You even saw that. I think you said you saw this poster somewhere, and we're looking over the poster and you were like, excuse me, what the hell? So I am very confused about, I would love to find it, and I could not find interviews or him talking about this movie at all. At least on like,
because if he wrote that first script, right? And then you have the committee of a production, like this is sort of the Madam Web thing that we just saw with Dakota Johnson, where she's like, look, these movies are made by committees. Sometimes the movie that you set out to make, whether you are a writer or an actor or whatever, is not the final product. Actors, we rarely, if ever, have a say in what the final product is going to look like. And that is another example of writers. That's super, super common. Like writers oftentimes will watch their baby get butchered in front of them. Like it is wild to see. But yeah, it's Paul Dini probably wrote something relatively decent. I mean, he's writing this, after Batman the Animated Series came out. He's clearly an accomplished writer. He's been writing comics for a long time. He's been writing scripts for a long time. But in the confines of live action, and it's also that period of 1994 where like cinema was kind of lost. It didn't know what it was doing.
Well, you noted this with in the Doom episode, another great episode. I'm going to see if I can list all 20 episodes of Nerd Juice, listen instead. But the Doom episode, you noted that like Edgar Wright and how am I dropping his name? Simon Pegg, they approached them, were like, would you like to do a rewrite? And they were like, no. And it's probably because of like stuff like this. They're like, I know you're bringing us in because we're a big name, but our name's going to get attached to this and you're going to ignore us. So is what it is. Okay, so that fight's going on. Satori fighting Shuko. He does his shadow power and we flip away. Okay, Jeff, we were at 11. We're about to go to 12. A Bobo shows up. And in our script, I have a picture of him in the game. So in the game, he is a giant monster guy with kind of a monster face. Yeah. I don't know what the fuck the movie design for him is, because it literally looks like he's just got a balloon that was pumped up on him.
He looks like he got hit with blades, blood.
Yeah, good one.
Things. Yeah.
Yeah. And the number 2 one where like then they get it and all the blood. So he comes in as a monster to attack him. And again, this is where you get the silly things like the guys are freaking out or whatever. And Jeff, this doesn't even make sense. So a Bobo as a monster comes in. Horrible looking monster, horrible design.
Like shit. He looks so bad. He looks so bad.
Spend some of that boat money on the costume design. I'm begging you, movie. They didn't. The costume in this, I feel so bad for the prop department.
All they needed to do was just get a massive muscle suit. That's all they had to do.
Or you know what they could have done? They could have had the geek actor that was there be the one that grabs it. And then he goes there and then
Comes out like a cap. You want a Captain America scenario, yeah.
that's all you have to do. You literally had the before and after. You swap the actor. The guy that already says, "Hey, he's like, hey, you know the character in the game that is the giant guy that I already look exactly like. What if you just cast me as that exactly? Do the Kevin Nash thing for Super Shredder. Just cast a 7-footer as the 7-footer. You don't
Right.
need
This is after they did Super Shredder, by the way. This is 3 years after Super Shredder. Why didn't they just be like, hey, does anybody still have that suit, that Super Shredder suit? Can we borrow that?
that would have just have Kevin Nash show up as a Bobo. That would have
Just
been
have
amazing.
Kevin Nash be a Bobo, right?
Yes, we need that if you're going to remake the movie. Okay, so anyway, Satori though saves the day. Jeff, she comes in, she knocks a Bobo into a giant net. I know he's a monster, but apparently that's enough to knock him out of commission.
With a 80-pound heavy bag. He's getting bricks thrown at him and it means nothing. And an 80-pound heavy bag from behind takes him out.
Nothing but net, expresses Billy. Shut up, Billy. But then Jeff, Satori's acting really weird. She's cracking her knuckles like Shuko. She says, hey, you need to give me the medallion for safekeeping. They're like, wait a minute, you're not Shuko. I noted this out for butt fights. This was just weird. So her and Jimmy get in a fight and she kicks at him and he dodges. And his counter move is literally to just grab her butt and push. It was really weird. It's a weird scene. It's in the movie, I promise. But they lock Shuko as Satori, who is their guardian. Don't worry, she's going to be out of the story in a second. Anyway, spoilers, apologies. Into a cage.
They essentially take a huge participation in her murder.
Yep. Well, so they lock her in a cage, and then Shuko's like, hey, turns out I can just be a shadow and escape. So we're seeing. So again, I want to stress this. He has the ability with this medallion to turn into a shadow and possess anybody he wants.
As long as there's
So
not a fan nearby.
Well, we'll get to that. And apparently the medallion maybe defends him. But so the point is when he came into the house and was like, give me the medallion, literally all
theater.
he had to do, the theater, sorry, all he had to do was go, I'm going to possess you. Here's the medallion. Peace out. He is such a horrible villain. So anyway, he's like, give me the medallion, even though I have you cornered and trapped, or I will burn the place to the ground. And Huey and Lewis, nice gangster scene, but again, this is falling slapstick, pour a bunch of gasoline. He gives him 2 seconds. He doesn't even give him time to decide before lighting the theater on fire. They do manage to get Satori out. So when you're saying take an active participation in a murder, they do get her out, but then Shuko comes to fight them and she shoves them out the door and slams the door behind them. That does happen. So they get her out. They do get her out, Jeff. But then they have to fight Shuko and she does the, mentor thing. If she pushes them out the door, says, keep the medallion safe, slams the door behind him, building goes up in flames. Shuko goes to his car and is like, we're going to go meet the gangs and then they're going to track down the medallion for us. Same scene. The 2 brothers are watching the theater go up. So Shuko and his gang, instead of going like, they were on foot and we have a car, what if we just drive around the block a few times and see if we can pick them up? He's like, no, we're going to get the gangs to find this medallion for us. So this entire movie is Robert Patrick saying, I need that medallion that is too hard to get, while literally having the powers of a god and not getting the medallion.
He doesn't know how to get the medallion and gets mad when he gets half of the medallion.
He is such a bad villain.
The logic
right.
behind him is so wild.
We talked about our other CGI.
No.
We cut to Alyssa Milano's real brother playing a roller coaster VR game. And he's, by the way, we've just got, I did skip a scene kind of. Basically, Marin is the daughter of the police chief and she wears a wig. So she has like bleached blonde short hair when she's with the gang. She has normal brunette hair when she's at home. Her brother knows that she's up to something. He's playing video games.
Filled with bleached hair, by the way.
Yeah, you gotta have the bleached hair. All right. And anyway, we hear on the news that Power Corps is doing terrorist activity. Marin is like, Power Corps is good. And her dad, the police chief, is like, they're terrorists. We got to do something about the gangs. Also, we do see that a Bobo who was in the theater that blew up was picked up by the Power Corps. Don't worry. It'll come up.
It's gonna
Last
circle back.
thing-
It's gonna circle back in a really weird fucking way, man.
Last thing, Shuko goes like very Shredder, He goes to meet all of the gangs, like an underground thing, looks very much like Shredder and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles too.
With the hills have eyes guy.
Yeah. And so the leader of the gangs is like, we're not listening to no one. Shuko comes up as a shadow, just chokes the guy.
Yeah,
Like,
chokes
force
him in a
chokes the-
silhouette. Yeah, it's pretty rad.
and the guy died. It's cool, but at the same time, it's like, oh, you raise your hand, you're like, let me just get this straight. You can transform into a shadow. You are able to still fully use your hands and stuff while in shadow form, and you can possess whoever you want. And your current issue is you were not able to get a medallion from 3 people you were standing directly in front of.
He's not
Roasting.
putting a lot of effort into his planning.
It's-
I think he is an embodiment of the film. I think he is an allegory for the process of making the movie Double Dragon, in that he knows what he wants, but that keeps changing and he doesn't know how to execute it.
That's true. It's very funny. It's just like unintentional Gremlins 2, and not in a good way, not in an enjoyable way.
No, Gremlins 2 is amazing.
Gremlins 2 is deconstructing itself in real time. This time in real time, like Robert Patrick is an embodiment of the film, and you were like, this is so stupid. All right, we do get our payoff to the grilled cheese in the engine, because their car doesn't work anymore because it's grilled cheese now because they threw cheese in it. Ha 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 ha. Question about this scene. This is Billy and Jimmy going like, Satori's gone. We got to move on. Jimmy throws something in the water in this scene. Did you catch that at all?
No, I'm gonna add that Jimmy seems really chill about her being dead, about his guardian
Well,
blowing up because he locked her in a cage.
I give a little bit of defense here. I thought this, I don't want to give the movie too much credit. I found this was 2 appropriate forms of grief. Billy is saying, Satori's gone. What are we going to
Anger
do in
and
despair? And Jimmy is angry and saying, she should have told us about it. They're both reacting in different ways, but whatever. The brothers are like, what are we going to do now? Satori's gone. We got to defend this. They start walking along the river, and there's a gang. Very warriors come out to play. They all start, I think, like hitting poles against something or
Okay.
whatever.
All right, so now we're going to talk about this gang for this collection of gangs and what they represent. Now, do you have a favorite gang in this group of gangs? Do you like the mime with frog hands, with like gloves that have bulbous fingers on them? Do you prefer? My favorite is the suicidal postman.
We're going to get to that. Yes, for sure.
The postal, but like all the action is bad. Like it's so bad.
Well, here's what's funny. So basically, it turns out that Shuko has told all of the gangs, hey, get me the medallion, and the Lee brothers are unlocked. So they walk by this gang, they have a picture of them, and they're basically like, hey, you can't go. This is the game. This is the game, and one of the only scenes I thought was half decent. Now, I think you are right. I think in hindsight, I'm basically saying I did not mind watching Mark Dacascos beat up people for a bit and was able to ignore Scott Wolf in the same period of time. Because a bunch of gang members running at the 2 Lee brothers, them kicking and trying to escape. That's the game, and that's actually half decent. That's about 2 minutes of this movie conservatively, like at best.
Yeah.
So they run away from the gang, and you're like, that was a good scene, right? It embodies the gang. You're fighting through gangs for a reason. And then at the end, for no reason, this postman says special delivery, leaps off of a giant thing to try and land on them. They just stand out of the way, and he dies, because of course he dies. And then Jimmy says, never seen a postman moves that fast. And they laugh. And that is this entire movie. This movie cannot have a serious scene end without a bad pun. And what's more offensive, maybe to you as a stand-up comedian, is like, not only does it end with a joke, it's not even a good joke. It's not even
They
a good
miss jokes.
It
They
is not
miss
even
wordplay. They miss jokes. Now, I will add, and I said none of the action is good here. I'm going to pull back on that. Mark does fine. Scott does not.
which is, yeah. And I mean, again, you can't be mad when you say, hey, the actor who I completely forgot that Jack from Lost was on Party of Five. I never watched Party of Five.
Matthew Fox and Scott Wolf. Yeah.
Yeah. I never watched Party of Five. I was like, oh yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
But I guess it's like when you hire people for certain things and don't use them, it's like, hey, we're having all of our stunt actors do serious acting, and we're having all of our serious actors try and do stunts. It's like, what are you doing? But this scene wasn't horrible, but then the end ends weird. So they wind up in a shed, completely overrun. How are they going to get out, Jeff? There is one thing here where Jimmy literally shoves a pole through a hole and should knock out a guy's eye. doesn't though. He
That's
just
the annoying mohawk.
yeah, yeah. It's Asher, right? But anyway, how are we going to escape? It turns out there is a boat in this shed, Jeff,
Boathouse.
and boom, they take the boat, and now we're going to have a big boat chase. Much again, the
This
game
boat
doesn't.
chase takes so long. And I do like that we get to yada yada over this boat chase because it's clearly they spent a chunk of money on this boat chase and it is so boring.
This was in the one fun fact that I did want to add is this was filmed in the Ohio River. This is a Wikipedia fact, where basically they told everybody, by the way, we're going to be doing a bunch of, explosions on this river tomorrow. So be on the lookout. Shocker, not everybody watches the news. So
They didn't tell enough people. Yeah.
middle of the Ohio River, they got over 200 calls from people going like, there were a bunch of explosions in the river today. What the heck? Again, so much work into a scene that is out of place in this movie, but it allows the villains to think that Billy and Jimmy are dead. Again, they do the exact same thing that Shuko did. They're like, they're dead. Bring the drivers. Let's just go away. Let's not even wait around. We get a diarrhea joke because it's the pollution. There's been a running thing about pollution. They basically say the river's so polluted, if you eat it,
You'll lose
if
your
you
hair
drink
and
it,
have diarrhea
you'll
for a
get
week.
diarrhea. Ha 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 ha. We go back to channel 69 again, and we are informed that the truce is off. The truce of gangs only come out at night is off because Shuko's taken over. And we kind of see both Shuko and the police there. So Billy and Jimmy actually do decide to go to Power Corp for help. Okay. You were amazing in catching something as seen. Abobo is being tortured, and he is being tortured because he has been tied up to a chair that, with how strong we have been told, he should easily be able to break out of. And Marion is force feeding him spinach.
Like a spinach kale smoothie or something like that.
And he is audibly farting during all of this. Ha ha ha.
Which that can't smell good. That's torture for
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah.
I think okay, so I have come up with the logic behind this. This is the torture that children would relate to. And this movie is made for children. And they accidentally got a PG-13. But this as a PG, like kids don't like spinach. Like that's a bit, it might as well have been Brussels sprouts, right? So like I think I understand why they were doing that. It's just stupid.
Yeah, and behind the scenes, there's like an interview with Robert Patrick talking about the movie, and he's like, I think this movie is great because it doesn't have gratuitous violence. It doesn't have any profanity. It's a fairy tale made for kids. And even if that was true, which I do not agree with you, Robert Patrick, but that's just something the movie itself put out. So I'm not expecting him
And
to be
also
like,
they didn't see the final product either.
yeah. So, but he says that, and again, I think you're right, where they were attempting to go for that. By the way, second best line of the movie, Marion says, tell me what I need to know. Stop acting dumb. Abobo. I'm not acting.
Now what's funny about the torture though is that for no reason, another expensive thing that they had to do was pay for the rights to play 100% Pure Love by Crystal Waters in the background.
It is barely audible. You caught it, and I was like, what are you talking about? Looked up the song and then hopped back to the scene and was like, Jeff is right. That is playing right now.
It was immediate. As soon as that scene starts, I may be half a second into it and I'm like, why are they playing 100% Pure Love? Like it came so fast to me that I was like, this is such an insane song. It doesn't belong in the scene. You paid for Crystal Waters, 100% Pure Love in 1994, which is like the height of her powers almost. And it makes no sense to put it in this movie.
Alternative theory, Jeff, could this be the case where like they were gifted it? Like she's like, I love you guys. Because, he did a bunch of music video stuff.
Yeah,
the director.
I mean, maybe he knew her, but like it wouldn't have been gifted.
Okay. Well, that's my only counter theory because, I'm a huge fan of Kevin Smith, and I would say this is a weird strength, weakness, maybe even a weakness I have, where Kevin Smith is amazingly good to people that he likes. He will, sometimes, Kevin Smith won't cut a scene that he likes because he likes his friends in the scene, which is completely admirable. And so I could see the same thing where like Crystal Waters, like, I'm going to do you a favor. I'm going to lend you my song for the movie. And he's like, I have no place for this song. We'll put it here. That is my only.
I mean, but you got to remember too that it's not the artist that
Yeah, it would be the
gets to
label.
decide how much it costs to use a song.
But you are not wrong. It's barely audible in the scene. I was amazed when you noticed that. The guys get in. It's stupid. I'm not even going to say that part, Jeff.
What,
I
the
don't care.
use other door bit?
Use other. No, nope. We're skipping over it.
Don't
you guys
see
can watch
this
the
movie,
if you want.
folks. I cannot stress enough. Do not see this movie.
Okay, my little fake Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles thing is their babies, because when they get in, Power Core is revealed to be a bunch of kids. Again, this is silly because they get in and they're surrounded and it's a bunch of kids like with their fists up. And I'm like, these are 4th degree black belts. Those kids are gone if they care.
It's a Chuck E. Cheese that runs on a generator.
Yeah, because I'll just skip into this part. There is an arcade in this building that they have hopped into. As Jeff mentions, it's got a generator, important thing. And in this arcade, in this kids' hideout run by Alyssa Milano terrorist group, there is a Double Dragon cabinet. It's the only one that's listed. The other ones all have their names scratched out, Jeff. Don't think about it, Moop. Don't think about it.
No, I can't. That would be like somebody in Fight Club, the movie, reading Fight Club, the book.
Just
like, I fucking can't with this movie.
Sorry, Jeff. We have to.
Dre, you broke me with this movie.
We have to keep going too. By the way, this next scene. So, the Lees and Marion agree to team up, and their plan is all of the kids go into Shuko's big Trump tower. Here's the thing. I don't know if you had the same take. This is the 90s. When we're talking like imposing villain towers, the special effects, whatever they use for it, I was like, that's not an imposed. They're supposed to be like, and now we're at Shuko's villain lair. And I'm like, that's an insurance company in Ohio. Like, that's not an imposing villain lair.
Yeah.
But
they're doing a Crocodile Dundee 2, where they're creating a diversion by whooping and hollering and.
Yeah, that's what the kids are doing when I'm saying they're doing it at Shuko's giant evil villain lair. And I'm like, that's not a lair, but proceed. The kids are doing that. While they are doing that, Marion, Jimmy, and Billy are sneaking in through the side. While they do this, Marion opens up a grate, gratuitous butt shot. The guy's ogle her butt.
They fight over who gets to be behind her ass in the pitch black.
And because, the security guards are distracted by this, they get in. Jeff, does Marion have a plan? Yes, she does. Chekhov's gun.
The world's weakest magnet.
No. That's not Marion's plan. That's Billy's plan.
Oh, okay.
Earlier in the movie, Marion stole the communication device from the Mohawk gang. She is going to use this to upload that the Maniacs gang is stealing profits in this gang coalition that just formed with Shuko. That's going to make all of the gang members angry, and it's going to cause a turf war between all the gang members. So Marion's like, we got to take down Shuko. I got a plan. She's like, I know what we're going to do. And for what it's worth, remember, in this movie, Shuko basically is just like, I can kill any of you. You have to rally behind me. So Alyssa Milano being like, I know what I'll do. I'll get them all to get angry at each other and have infighting. It's not going to work. But don't worry. The guys here talking, and Jeff, I'm so sorry to report this, but Marion's dad is cutting a deal with Shuko. Marion's dad, the police chief. Can you believe police chief might be corrupt? Maybe.
He's cutting a deal.
Well, he was gonna. But that's where it's revealed. It's revealed that the police cut a deal with the gangs to have martial law, at night. Basically, gangs are allowed at night. Normal people are not. Shuko's like, deal's off, but I'll bribe you. So let me do what I want. And he's like, he's showing some spine, saying absolutely not. At this point, Shuko has left this ultra important, super powerful medallion in a box unguarded on his desk open. And the guys see it. And Billy's
Why isn't he wearing it?
Why isn't he wearing it? Why isn't it somewhere safe?
These
are the most important medallion.
Cigar box.
This is the most important medallion in the universe. The people that learned about it, this would be Satori, Shuko, and the Lee's dad. None of them care. So Billy's like, give me a magnet. I've got some string. I'll, fish it out. This part I actually liked a little because he's trying to do it and he fails. And Lash notices it and she just like walks over calmly, grabs a spear and start stabbing up. One
Start
of the few
stabbing North into the vent trying to kill them. That part was funny.
that
It's not
I
good,
like
but
that
it's
part.
funny. Because she also didn't mention like, hey boss.
Yeah, she's I'm just gonna kill him. It's fine. They all fall out. Again, scene can't stay consistent because Marion looks up at her dad and says, "Does this mean I'm grounded?" Just stop it, movie. Just
Cut
stop.
it out.
All right. So again, I want to stress all of the heroes, including the medallion he wants, are trapped behind him in his lair. And so the guys try and kick him. And so instead of using his powers to just dismantle him, it should be easy. He stands out of the way, and behind him, he has like ropes to his subterranean lair. So the guys fall behind him. So essentially, Shuko's like, I know what I'll do. I'll trick you into escaping. And then Marion kind of does a similar thing. She jumps behind him. So all of them have escaped. Shuko goes to chase him. Lash and Marion's father have a fight. It's really stupid. He beats her by pushing a thing over on her. So, yeah,
Their fight is one of the worst fights I've ever seen in any movie ever.
it's true.
It's like they didn't even have a choreographer.
They're like, what if you
It-
chase each other around a room for a bit and then you knock over
And
a
like
statue and knock her
slowly
over?
try pushing stuff into each other while this woman just like swirls a whip. Like I don't know what she's doing with that whip.
And she's supposed to be like the second in command, big bad. She's a character in the game. The movie, they're like, yeah, what if the 80 or 60-year-old police chief that, is doing nothing can beat her that? Okay, sorry, Jeff. It's even worse. They're in the underground layer where a Bobo got turned into a steroid monster. And it turns out that Shuko has been cryogenically freezing people and
It's
giving-
unclear. It's unclear. They're dead? No, they're not. They're in suspended animation? Maybe. We don't know why. But out of nowhere, like an NBA player wearing zombie makeup stands up,
being possessed by Shuko.
possessed by Shuko.
They're doing what they can. They managed to kill him by like knocking a door on him. And then they turn on a fan. They got rid of Shuko. They win.
I will add that is the best effect they have in the movie is knocking the door on him. Because it crushes the guy, but Shuko's shadow version still exists up there. That is the one thing where I was like, oh, that's nice. The one part where I was like, okay, that's okay.
All right. That's a solid hour and 15 into the movie at this point. All right. So they do that. They're like, oh, we got rid of the shadow. We win. Then Shuko shoots it, like the fan stops running. Shuko shoots out as a thing. I don't know if you caught this, Jeff. I had to rewatch this scene. It looks like he actually tries to possess Billy, glances off the medallion, and then winds up in a guy with like a bullet head.
So the medallion prevents the possession.
Yes. So we do see that briefly. The only reason I bring it up is that Marion is going to mention it in the next scene. And I didn't notice it on first watch, but I rewatched. I was like, I'll give it to you.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Billy and Marion escape. Jimmy is captured by Shuko, who like chokes him out.
I just like, dude, this movie broke me.
It's bad. I do want to give the slight defense. I saw it when I was younger. I couldn't remember. I was like, let's watch it again. It can't be that bad. And it is that bad. The game is a delight. I had a lot of fun playing Double Dragon. It was so fun playing Double Dragon with Landon, Jeff. It was
great.
It was a delight.
Good for you guys. Great. I will add that this movie is worse than you remember it.
It's true. And I
It's
just saw it.
legitimately worse.
I didn't remember it. That's what I'm saying. And so I was like, I saw this. I know I had to have.
Its IMDb rating is like a 3.9, and that is so generous.
All right. So anyway, Shuko is trying to convince Jimmy. He's like, I'll let you and your brother escape if you give me the medallion. And then plot twist-ish, he's like, by the way, your dad didn't realize what he had with the medallion. That's why I killed him.
No,
Like,
who cares?
You're like, oh, the super evil bad guy has been super evil. It's okay.
Who gives a shit?
All right,
That should have been established in minute 8. By bringing it in at the end of the movie, everybody watching is like, who gives a shit?
And again, we have 3 reasons. We have been given 3 reasons to this movie why the medallion was split up. Well, you only needed one. Okay, we go back to Power Core. Billy and Marion are flirting. I don't know if there's other music playing on it. But then Lash and gang break in. You got some fighters. They use a bolt cut. I don't know. I'm just skipping over all this. The biggest part of this that happens is Abobo's in the bathroom, realizes he's a monster and cries, comes out. They knock out Lash.
This is the first time
And-
he's seen himself.
And he's just like, oh, it's sad. Okay. So anyway, again, this happens for the second time. So they're having a fight and Power Core is somehow holding their own against a bunch of adults. Billy is about to get ambushed. Jimmy shows up and saves him. And you're like, Jimmy, you're back. And guess what? Jimmy is possessed by Shuko. So 2 times in this movie, Shuko has shown up when our heroes are about to get beaten up and saved them to then fake out and reveal that he's not really them. Shuko calls Billy Dragonfly, which was interesting to me because that's something that Jimmy had called Billy in the fight, and he said he didn't like it. So my question is, does Shuko also get all of the memories? Is this like a rogue situation where he gets memories when he possesses the person? Because if so, why was he interrogating Jimmy?
Because they don't have a plan, Dre. Like, you can't analyze this movie. I know that was our goal. I know that that's the plan and everything like that.
No more plans. You're always planning, Jimmy, and I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it.
So are you telling me, Jeff, you're sick of me always having a plan, don't have a plan, much like Jimmy is told by Billy in the second act of this movie?
It's
I'm
just
so sorry,
fucking
Jeff.
movie. It's so bad, and it's infuriating. Like every part of that where it's like it's maddeningly inconsistent as well. And that is another huge sin, is how fucking inconsistent any of the information is. It's like a Frankenstein of troped movies from that time, and all of it's put together wrong. And it's so infuriating to me. I'm so mad at it. I'm so angry at this movie for everything that it's done. Sorry, I don't mean
everybody.
to like lose my cool about this movie. I know this isn't something I normally do on this show, but I'm so angry at this movie.
I can't even say you're wrong. Okay, so anyway, at this point, Billy and Jimmy are fighting and Billy's losing. And he's really mad at the medallion because I forgot. It's been a running theme throughout the movie. He's been trying to get the medallion to work. He can't figure it out. Shuko in 1 second figures out how to make the medallion give him power of the, I don't know. It's power of the soul, but that's just turning into shadows, whatever. The other one's power of the body. Billy can't figure out how to get it to work. He throws the medallion whips around and comes back to him. And Billy is invincible now, Jeff. And they show he's invincible because he can survive a kick and a punching bag falling at him.
Yeah, that would break his neck.
That's true. But I mean, I'm just saying, like, in the land of special effects that they have to at this point, they're like, let's show how strong he is. And they're like, a bag fell on him and he got up. Okay. And earlier in this movie, he survived like jumping down an elevator shaft on his own. So anyway, Shuko threatens to kill Jimmy. Remember, he's possessing his body, but Billy keeps this from happening by beating the crap out of Jimmy, which is kind of funny. Does tie up the, hey, Billy and Jimmy fight at the end of the first game. So, hey, they got that part of the game put into the movie. Jeff? Shuko, though, while he's doing it, his medallion falls off. Shuko in shadow form picks up Billy's medallion, puts them together. The kids say, oh, almost shit, but not quite. He says, yep. And he turns into 2 racist samurai.
He
They're
sure
shadow
does.
warriors?
Well, I mean, I don't
They're
necessarily.
racist on
I
2
wouldn't go so
fronts.
far as to call that specifically racist, but
The
it
blackface
certainly-
is what I'm talking about because they're supposed to be shadow samurai and they are on full blackface.
Yeah, but that's not blackface. Black makeup is not blackface.
Fair enough.
That
But
is.
that's what it looks like. I'm telling you that
Sure,
it looks like blackface.
I
samurai.
understand that, but that's one of the things that 2024 needs to calm down on, is that not all makeup is racist. You know, like there is context. They have like pitch black makeup on their faces primarily because they are shadow warriors, not because they're Al Jolson dancing around with big red lips. Like that's not the same thing. Like,
You're like, you can be offended by this scene, but make sure it's for the right
yeah,
reason.
be
If it's a bad-
offended because the scene sucks.
So they show up he's Shuko turns into two samurai, shadow samurai, basically that can like attack, but you can't hit them.
Yeah, they kind of look like the way he looks in that Double Dragon fighting game, and I think the cartoon a little bit like black, kind of like almost like a weird Japanese Black Panther kind of vibe.
Did you watch the cartoon at all?
I was a little bit not into that. I'm sure I've seen chunks of it before, but it wasn't for me.
Because that was where some of the whole like we'll get to the blue and red suit that is coming up in a second. A lot of like the character design and even like the Shadow Gang and the Shadow Warriors that came from like the comic book and animated series. So it's very mismatched because the IP based on the game is already so far off the beaten track. The game itself has gone off the rails. So that's why it's a mismatch. It's like literally it's like pick one because you can't try and do all of them at once. Anyway, a Bobo to the rescue, Jeff, though, because he comes and he says, turn on the light. He doesn't like the light. That's not even consistent, Jeff. I'm sorry. You told me not to do this. I'm going to do this anyway. When Shuko takes over the gangs, for whatever reason, there's a bunch of flashes. I don't know if it's flash photography. I don't know if they're just like turning on the lights on and off because they're happy. I don't know if it's a rave. But when Shuko kills the big bad of the gangs and is like, I'm the leader now, and everybody's like, yeah, there are a bunch of flashes going off, and he is fine. Now, admittedly, in the movie, they make sure that like the blinds are shut before he goes in or that he has sunglasses on, but it's kind of,
There's one scene earlier in the movie where there's a light turned on. He's like, not until I have my shades on.
yeah, but it's not like, it's like he kind of doesn't like light. Like it's, you know, he's like got a small allergy to it. It's not like light destroys him. But again, we learned earlier, this room has a generator. This Chuck E. Cheese's has a generator. Alyssa Milano spend like 30 seconds on her trying to, you know, basically start a generator like she's starting a lawnmower. She does. The light makes Shuko upset. Oh, by the way, Shuko, when he turned into the warrior, turned on all the lights in the city. That's why the lights aren't on. It's a thing. Anyway, so she turns on the generator, the lights go on. He gets hurt, so the medallion falls out. The brothers get the medallion, they put it together. This was like in the comics where they would do like a Saiyan gesture and touch each other's hands and they would transform into double dragons. So they keep that for the movie. And Jimmy is in a red outfit. Billy is in a blue outfit. It's bedazzled. They look like they're figure skaters.
It looks like
which
if you were doing
fine.
Double Dragon on Broadway.
Or Double Dragon on ice. You know, that'd be kind of fun to see.
Yeah, it is an ice dancer's outfit. That's like the best way to put it, Dre. Yeah.
Double Dragon on ice. Let's do it. Okay, so
it has real Spider-Man turn off the dark energy to the costumes.
All right, that'd be a fun. Anyway, so at this point, okay, Jeff, they do that. We have a floating head of Satori saying the dragon power has been rightfully restored. I don't.
Oh God, it's so fucking bad.
And it's like shiny and sparkly while it's happening. I don't.
Oh, it's The Simpsons when it's whatever, like Dingo character. He's like playing a Sonic the Hedgehog, and when he starts playing, a little head shows up above him and goes, "You must find and devour the 8 crystal babies, or else you're in deep didgeridoo." It's like a head talking down. She's like Oz all of a sudden.
So she's Satori, who got killed in a fire by the boys' negligence earlier in this movie, shows up to say, "All good, now defend the double dragon." They beat up Shuko, and then using the same power, Jimmy possesses him, has him slap himself while the kids laugh. You know, this guy that just killed tons of people and with the gangs, ha ha ha.
And then give $129 million to the police and then get himself arrested. Which,
yes,
there's no way that's going to hold up in court.
It's worth noting, in this movie, the police, they were like, we got to go fight. The police chief captain is like, we got to go fight Alyssa Milano's dad. And all the other police are like, no, we're not. And so the good ending of this movie is it's actually very real world, like modern world. It's like, you know, that organization of people that didn't do anything to help during the major thing. It's like, we're going to give them $129 million. Also, that is laughable. I know you and Adam Todd Brown you don't even like the show and Unpopular Opinions are just like the budget of, say, the Los Angeles police is astronomical. So 129 million in 1994 isn't even like what they're really getting in modern day. So that's kind of funny as a cultural touchstone, peek behind the curtain on humanity thing. Again, same thing. Movie should be over, but Shuko, as he's getting arrested, puts his head out the window and says, "You think I'm bad? Wait till you meet my lawyers." Ha 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 ha. There's that. A Bobo comes up and is like, "Hey, I don't want to be bad. Can I hang out with you?" Marion has fixed up their car. Jimmy's like, "Yeah, you drive, so me and Marion can hang out in the back of the car. We can ditch Billy." Billy's in the car, and then all of them scream because a Bobo presses the turbo button on
A
the
bad
car.
driver or something.
Yeah, something. And then the one half decent end is we do have Huey and Lewis. I forgot we did get and the news at one point in the movie.
Yeah.
Robert Patrick
Huey,
says,
Lewis, the news.
"Any news?" Yeah. And they're not characters in the game. So again, this was the writer added a pun to have that joke in this movie. Like there is so much of this movie is set up for punchlines that aren't even good. It's like you were the writer. You had the ability to set that up, and that's what we got. That is terrible. But they're on the side of the road saying, "We'll hench for food." That was kind of funny. That was not horrible, but that is the end of Double Dragon, the movie. They do kind of argue, should we use the Double Dragon for good? No, Satori said we should just defend it again. This is kind of going into the comics and stuff where they are like vigilantes, setting up the sequel you're invariably going to get, Jeff. But that
Right.
is Double Dragon.
This is the worst movie we've ever covered. This will be the worst movie we will have ever covered. It's infuriating. It's so infuriating. I hope you didn't watch this movie. It's one of those movies like they did it on a Gamefully Unemployed movie night, and even then I'm like, it's still not funny. It's still not fun watching it with my friends. But it's just one of those things where it's like so infuriating, so disjointed, such an example of because I believe this is the first movie that this company made, I believe, the production company or whatever, or like an
It's
early
Imperial
movie.
Entertainment is what it's called.
Imperial, yeah. Spoiler alert, I don't think they still exist for a reason. It's just not good. And it's disjointed, it's discombobulated and infuriating and a waste of the modicum of talent that they did have. When you look at choreography now and you look at something even like a John Wick, which was not a big budget movie, by putting a little bit more effort into the choreography. And actually a good example of that is Mortal Kombat, the movie, versus Street Fighter or this. Mortal Kombat put a lot of effort into the choreography, and it is very clear. Like the Liu Kang versus Reptile fight is still incredible. You don't get that in these movies because they do not give a damn about the fight choreography while they're using fighting or action games. It's a wreck. It's a waste. Anyway,
And it is really, this happened with this and Street Fighter, where it is utterly baffling the talent they have on staff for fighting versus what is then actually focused on.
you had Benny Urquidez, for God's sake, like as on Street Fighter. Like, I don't know. It's just one of those things where the action is sloppy, the dialogue is weak, the comedy is bad, the acting is hammy, but not in a fun way. It's like the script is all over. There's so many dangling participles of plot just left everywhere. Dre, I think this is a good exclamation point on the season of unfortunate video game adaptations, because this is worse than like an Uwe Boll movie. I would have rather watched House of the Dead than this.
Well, and again, for those that don't know, if I'm not mistaken, the Uwe Boll thing is essentially real world producers. The popular Mel Brooks musical turned movie turned movie 2 times.
He
So
gets
basically
huge discounts for filming in Germany, I believe.
his goal in making those movies is not to make a good movie. It's to say, can I get people to invest enough money to take advantage of tax breaks such that it benefits them, and he can get the movie greenlit by being based on an IP, and he knows that video games like a guaranteed greenlight. So that was like his cheat code. This movie, it seemed like I have no idea. I really would be curious to know some more behind the scenes how this came together. It felt like it was put together by a committee And this maybe another throwback to another great episode of Nerd, Fievel Goes to West. This almost feels like one of those where it might have been a project that was greenlit and kind of no one with any vision stuck around. And then this is what you kind of got out at the end, where you only got studio notes, no one with any vision, no one that wanted anything.
This is a movie made by studio notes.
Yeah, 100%.
And bad budgets and a full lack of understanding how this would. God damn it! This fucking movie. I'm so mad at it because this could have been so easy to pull off. Like, all you needed was two badass dudes doing like a raid or a Judge Dredd or something.
What was there was a martial arts movie, I don't remember, I just remember like hearing about it, where essentially it was they went through like a hotel or something, like level by level, pagoda style.
That's the raid, right?
Is that the raid? Okay, so yeah, cool. So you said it. Yeah, you said it. So basically the point is, in Double Dragon, the game, you basically just go through 4 stages. And so you're exactly right, where even from production standpoint, in the game itself, it's like abandoned streets, warehouse, wooded area. Like it's ironic. And then in the last stage of the game is actually like temple.
Fortress. Yeah.
But to that point, that is very like you could literally have gotten a warehouse for 2 of your things. If you had it, you were talking about like British Columbia, right? In Canada, you can find a wooded area. You could literally redo the game, spending almost no money on like the location beyond, instead of spending lots of money to blow up a river.
Shifting your effects budget to your martial arts budget, your action budget.
And they already had it. They literally could have taken the people on, you not to be mean, you replaced Scott Wolf, and you literally could have done the movie, and for the budget they had.
Yep.
And I have no idea what happened.
Think about how much money they could have saved if they just removed that fucking roller coaster VR.
I don't know why that was in there. Yeah.
It's because it was the cutting edge of technology at that time. Anyway, that's a podcast for you.
Anything else you want to add to
Congrats
Double
to
Dragon?
us, I guess.
Did it.
We did it.
The game is really fun. Go play the game. I'll say
go
that.
Play Double Dragon. It's fun. The first 2 are great. Maybe pull back on the rest.
Yeah. First 2, Double Dragon 3. Okay, actually, let's throw out that little bit of trivia. Double Dragon 3 was a precursor to modern era, where in the arcade you could buy power-ups in shops in the game for quarters. And so this was an example of like in-app purchases back in the day, and people were rightfully furious about it. So funny enough, like this game did have a lot of history, good and bad. You said it was the bedrock that a lot of fighting games were built on. You are not incorrect. Yeah. It is seminal, right? Everybody knows. Yeah, beat 'em up. Everybody knows it. It's a great game, and just it went downhill real quick. I mean,
it's the big difference between games and movies. It's like, I understand that game plots and movie plots aren't always going to intersect, but like you can do better than this. And they just didn't. They had their vision. And I know it's so easy when you do not create to criticize, but that doesn't mean that art is immune from criticism. Like, yeah, people worked on it, but it's not like they were working on something good or with clear vision. Like, that's the thing. Like, not all art is good, even if art is subjective. Like, some of it is objectively bad, and that's what this is.
Well, I don't know if you're like me, but something that is very bizarre about me, Jeff, is I will get more angry at stuff that could have been good than stuff that, wasn't. That makes any sense at all. And so again, this movie, Paul Dini is a writer. They have Paul Dini. So you're like, the script is
all
bad.
There are good ingredients in this movie. Yeah.
Paul Dini is a writer. You're like, bad martial arts. Mark Dacascos is your lead. All right. What the heck? This seems really weird. One of the most seminal villains, Robert Patrick, is this. You have tons of good, choreographers, just people on staff. Interesting relation. One of the co-writers on this is Michael Davis, who wrote a movie called 100 Girls. This is a movie I saw just on Netflix years ago. And like, it's one of these movies that, again, we're not going to watch it for this show. I guarantee it, Jeff. Was so bad, but it was just like this weird thing where when I watched it, I was like, the ingredients for this movie could be something, but the fact that it is bad infuriates me. And that is this movie, where It had the ingredients to be good. You're even being like, okay, here's what you could have done to make it good. Here are examples of things in the same era that could have made it good. All of it failed. So I completely understand why you were like, I hate this movie, because not only are we watching it be terrible, we are like, there is no excuse for this to be. You can't be like, we didn't have a good writer. It's like, you had a good writer. It's like, we didn't have good martial artists. You had good martial artists. It's like, we didn't have enough money for effects. It's like, no, you had money for effects. We saw where you spent it. So nothing. Do not watch this movie is the last line, right, Jeff?
Right.
Right. But here, Jeff, here's the good news. We're at the end. We made it through it. It's very much like one of your runs. So follow Jeff. Hey there, Jeff Rowe on Instagram. He'll show you daily inspirational runs where Jeff will even note sometimes you do things you don't enjoy and you get through them and you're proud. Now, this isn't one of those cases where we gained anything. I mean, maybe
No.
I lost 50 calories with my hand motions and screaming, but we didn't get in better shape. We didn't better ourselves at all. Maybe we gave you a little bit of enjoyment. So there's that, but we're through it, Jeff, much like when you get through a run. We
are.
did it.
I will say, by the way, if you do go to the YouTube version of Double Dragon and read the comments, you will know that there are some real fucking morons that exist in this world that were just like, this is the best movie. I love this movie. I don't know why people give it such a hard time. Those people are bad people. They're bad. They're very bad. They're stupid. They're stupid people who
Well,
do
no,
not deserve
let's
love.
look back to the same thing we've talked about before. It's a running theme on this show. Just because you liked something when you were a kid does not mean it was good. In fact, if anything, it likely means you were a kid, and kids don't have the best taste. So you saying, I love, a lot of these, I've seen comments like, man, I watched this movie so many times on VHS. It's like, that was my reasoning for Ewoks, The Battle for Endor, Jeff. I saw it all the time when I was a kid. And as an adult, I can still say I have fondness and like it. But I hope at the end of that episode, I'll have to listen to it again. I didn't come out at the end and be like, yeah, this was a good movie, Jeff. It's like, no, this was an enjoyable movie to me. I can look back at it fondly, but I'm not going to defend it as a good movie. So a lot of these people in the comments, I will say, likely are going, man, I saw this a lot as a kid, and I love it. And in the so bad it's good range, some people are being like guilty pleasure, or man, I absolutely loved the mail scene where special delivery. It's like, it doesn't work when you are like, the so bad it's good doesn't work when like it's just bad. Like the person had the ability to set that up, and they were attempting to make a joke. So it's not even like, oh, look at this hilarious thing in a movie they didn't realize, a la The Room, right? They tried to set up a bad joke and it failed, and all you're laughing at is a comedian bombing, basically.
Yeah.
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 All right, Jeff, but what's other fun stuff people can see you do instead of this? Instead of
Well-
watching Double Dragon?
Well, I do Jeff Has Cool Friends, which is my bi-weekly long-form interview show with people that I find incredibly interesting. You can check that out. Early access to uncensored episodes with bonus content, plus early access to this show every month, nerd. Those are all available at patreon.com/JeffMay, where you can also get stuff in the mail from all the packages we do on I Must Break You, which is on my YouTube, which you might be listening to this on. My YouTube is youtube.com/@HeyThereJeffRo, just like all my social media.
JEFFRO.
I do, Fine. I do this show. Lots of fun stuff on there. Now we also do stuff with Tom Ryman. We took Tom and Jeff Watch Batman on the Gamefully Unemployed Network. And on top of that, I also have my stuff with Adam Todd Brown on the You Don't Even Like podcast network, such as You Don't Even Like This Show, You Don't Even Like Sports, You Don't Even Like Sports Live every Wednesday at 4 o'clock, and You Don't Even Like Sports Cards, where Adam and I do breaks together. And of course, Mint on Card, my monthly comedy show with my co-producer, Lisa Harden, who I am recording this in her apartment while she is at work. You can check that out if you are in Southern California. Blast from the Past on beautiful Magnolia in Burbank, California. We are the second Friday of every month.
Yeah, so you got some time. So this month has already happened, Jeff. It's been a weird month. We usually release this show on the third Thursday of the month. So in fact, we're always going to be right after Mint on Card. So you have no excuse, though. You have weeks before next month. Those always look like a blast, Jeff.
Ooh, if you guys want to meet Adam Todd Brown, come to the April 12th show. He's going to be on it.
5% off if you tell Adam Todd Brown he should watch Double Dragon with no context.
Yeah.
How's that, Jeff? All right. Same bucket of fish, Jeff. I'm sure that's an expression. You can find me, patreon.com/Jeff May. You can be a producer of this show. You can get things in the mail from Jeff and be a producer of this show. You got all sorts of levels. Producers that we've already got on the show. We love you. Thank you so much. We blew
Thank
some
you for
producers,
bearing with
Jeff.
me. I'm sorry if I was so angry in this episode.
I loved it, and I'm not sure if it's a good or bad thing if you're
I
a
had
fan like you getting tortured, Jeff.
I had 2 levels on this episode that I'm very aware of, which were slightly catatonic in shock and embittered rage at the existence of this movie. But we're done. We're going to come out the other side. We're going to do a non-movie season next. I realized, and we did talk about this, that we maybe have been diving a little too deeply into film, which that's not the point of this. I don't want us to just be a movie podcast. That's not the point. So we're going to break away from movies next. On top of that, I would like to again go back and shout out all of those producers that we had on Nerd real quick, just as a thank you. The Enchanting Wandering, Unpierced Left Nipple Cider, Served at Room Temperature, Norm from Cheers, Bimmy and Jimmy Out Fighting Crime, MikeSlater.com, fucking up search results for the right-wing radio host that shares my name since 2007. I'm going to start calling Yoda Old Grogu to see what happens, Burrito, Ricky Cilantro, Dan's Ninja Turtle Ooze, Porcelain Jesus, and of course, special thank yous to both Lisa Harden and Walker for their assistance in making this show happen.
I'll cap off and say we didn't talk about this. Bimmy and Jimmy was a typo at one point about Billy and Jimmy. Old school days didn't have copy editors, so they were referred to as Bimmy and Jimmy at once in a game. Same thing like I Am Error and Zelda 2. You can find me most places on the internet as @Nerd Numbers. If you want to hear me talk sports instead of movies, the Box Score Geek Show bi-weekly with Brian Foster. You can find most places as the Box Score Geek Show. As Jeff said, we're just going to have to decide the order, but we're going to be back with wonderful toys next season. This is going to be fun. I'm looking forward to next season. There is no conceivable way anything we do in next season will be as bad as Double Dragon.
It can't be.
The movie.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much. We love you so much.
Love you.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Nerd. If you want to help keep the podcast growing, it's definitely worth your while to head over to patreon.com/JeffMay. And also you'll get bonuses and early access to cool stuff. Cool stuff like videos of Jeff showing off awesome collectibles and doing pack-breaking videos. It'd be worth your while to check out Jeff May's YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/@HeyThereJeffro. That's spelled JEFFRO. And shocker, that is also his Twitter and Instagram account as well. So follow Jeff everywhere. You can find me most places on the internet as @NerdNumbers. Also, shout out to Chris Haugen for the outro theme of Pure Magic. Thanks so much, and we'll be back with another nerdy subject soon.